You wake up, check your Fidelity app, and see your retirement account bleeding. The headlines say the S&P 500 is crashing. Financial advisors are screaming at you to sell. Stop. The media is manufacturing panic to steal your wealth. Today, I'm showing you why doing absolutely nothing is your ultimate financial superpower. My name is Paul. I dig through the data that Wall Street buries under marketing decks and podcast sponsorships. If this is the first time you're seeing me, hit subscribe because the algorithm buries people who tell the truth almost as fast as your financial advisor buries his conflict of interest. Here is the setup. Every talking head with a ring light and a Squarespace site is screaming the same thing right now. 7 tech companies, Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Tesla, Meta, Alphabet, now represent over 33% of the entire S&P 500. The other 493 companies, decoration wallpaper, background extras in the Magnificent 7's movie. And the last time concentration hit this level, March 2000, right before the Nasdaq face planted 78% into the concrete. So naturally, the crash prediction industrial complex kicked into high gear. Every newsletter became a doomsday pamphlet. Every podcast became a survival guide. And millions of retirees, people who spent 3 decades brown bagging their lunch and skipping vacations to build their nest egg. They started losing sleep over a chart they saw on Twitter. Here is the thing, nobody's telling you though, and I mean nobody, not your advisor, not CNBC, not that guy from college who is suddenly a macro strategist on LinkedIn. The 2000 crash didn't destroy retirement accounts, asterisk, asterisk. What destroyed them was what people did in 2001, 2002, and 2003. The crash was a flesh wound. The panic was the bullet. Let that sink in. Everyone's drilling for the wrong damn emergency. Think about it like this. You've been trained your whole investing life to run a fire drill. Market drops, rebalance, volatility spikes, go defensive, headlines scream crash, trim risk. You've rehearsed this evacuation 100 times. But here is what your fire drill never taught you. The building isn't on fire. Your brain is on fire. The real catastrophe isn't your portfolio dropping 20%. The real catastrophe is you standing there with a fully loaded retirement account, watching red numbers scroll across your screen and doing the one thing, the single thing, that turns a temporary dip into a permanent crater, selling at the bottom. And then sitting in cash paralyzed, watching the recovery happen without you, like a guy who leaves a party early and finds out he missed the best night of everyone's life. That is the house fire nobody drills for. Your own panic, your own sweaty, 2 a.m., cortisol-drenched decision making. Now, let's talk about the bullshit prediction. Everyone's parroting. Concentration is high, therefore crash is coming. Okay, let's actually look at the data instead of just vibing with fear. Over the last 100 years, the market has hit extreme concentration levels 7 different times. Everyone points to March 2000, like it is the only case study in the textbook. Here is what they conveniently leave out of the newsletter. 5 out of those 7 times. The market didn't crash, it went up. After 2008, concentration spiked, market ripped higher the next year. After COVID in 2020, concentration hit levels that made analysts choke on their coffee. Every guru predicted Armageddon. The S&P climbed another 26% in 2021, 26%, while the experts were busy being wrong in public. So using concentration as a sell signal is like calling 911 every time you smell your neighbor's barbecue. You're not detecting danger, you're detecting hamburgers, and you're wasting everyone's time, including your own. But here is where it gets ugly. Even in the years where the market did go up after high concentration, most real people's portfolios didn't. And this is the part that should make you angry. Morgan Stanley tracked actual investor behavior during 2008, not hypothetical model portfolios. Real humans, real decisions, real money. If you held a boring 60/40th stock to bond portfolio and did absolutely nothing, didn't touch it, didn't look at it, didn't breathe on it, your portfolio dropped hard in 2008, then fully recovered by 2010. Round trip, you ended up right where you started, plus gains, like the crash never even happened. But the average investor, the real human being making real decisions with their real trembling hands, they sold during peak fear. And here is the kicker, they didn't even sell at the bottom. They're not that precise. They sold on the way down somewhere around the 70% mark, like jumping out of a plane because of turbulence and realizing halfway down that the parachute was the seat you just left. Then they waited and waited and waited, and only put money back in after the recovery was already cruising at altitude. By 2010, they were down over 20% compared to the person who just sat there and did literally nothing. Same market, same time period, completely different outcome. The market didn't screw them, their fire drill did. Let me tell you about a guy I knew. Ran a small manufacturing shop through the 90s, not sophisticated. Didn't read the Wall Street Journal, didn't have a Bloomberg terminal. He had a 401k through his company, some Vanguard target date fund. And I swear on everything, this man genuinely forgot his login password for about 3 years. 2008 hits, his buddies are panic, selling, moving to cash, calling their advisors at midnight, having miniature cardiac events over dinner. And this guy, he is asking me how to reset his damn password because he wants to peek at the damage. I told him, don't look, just don't look. He thought I was messing with him. 6 months later, he still hadn't T-logged in. By 2010, he finally checks his account. He is up from where he was in 2007. Not because he was brilliant, not because he had some secret strategy, because he was too lazy to panic. And lazy beat active. His friends who sold, they were still sitting in a cash position, agonizing over when to get back in while his account was already recovering like nothing happened. Lazy investing outperformed every overactive genius in his entire social circle. Let that be the most offensive financial truth you hear today. Okay, Pa, but what if 2026 is different? What if this is the big one? Fair question, and I'm going to answer it with math, not feelings, because feelings are what got your neighbor's portfolio killed. Vanguard ran the numbers on every single time the market dropped at least 5%. They tracked what happened if you panicked, bailed to cash, and sat on the sidelines like a scared kid who won't get back in the pool. Stayed out for 3 months. You underperformed the market 61% of the time. Stayed out for 6 months, 72%. A full year, which is what most people actually did in 2008. By the way, you underperformed 79% of the time. The median gap, 9%. So you're not just being cautious, you're mathematically lighting your own money on fire and calling it risk management. You're stacking the deck against yourself with surgical precision and then wondering why the cards never fall your way. Here's the part that rearrange your brain. I am looking at data going back to 1976, the 20 worst single trading days in market history. The days where you wake up, check your phone before you even peed, and your account is down 6 figures before breakfast. 9 of those 20 days, they happened in years where the market finished positive. Not just recovered, eventually, finished the year up. The day that feels like the apocalypse, it is often just noise inside a winning year. The day your gut screams sell everything, that is exactly the day you need to sit on your hands and do nothing. Your instincts are a liar, your gut is a con artist, and the financial media is its accomplice. There is a poker analogy that nails this. Bad poker players think the goal is to avoid losing any single hand, so they fold everything that smells even slightly risky. They protect their little stack, they feel safe, and they slowly bleed out over 4 hours while the good players eat them alive. Good players understand something different. The goal isn't to avoid loss. The goal is to maximize expected value over hundreds of hands. That means sometimes you take a calculated hit because the math works over time. You absorb short-term pain for long-term gain. Retirees who bail during volatility, they're playing like the worst poker player at the table. Folding winning hands because the flop looked scary, optimizing for emotional comfort instead of financial outcomes. And the math, cold, indifferent, unforgiving math, punishes that strategy every single time. Let me make this painfully concrete. 2 guys, both 55 years old in 2007. Both have exactly $1 million in retirement, both in a standard S&P 500 index fund. Guy A, let's call him Panic Paul. Paul's informed. Paul reads the news. Paul watches CNBC during his lunch break. Paul sees the housing crisis forming like a storm cloud, and in October 2008, when the market is down 30%, he sells. Moves to cash. He feels like a genius. He just dodged a bullet. He tells his wife they're safe. He sleeps like a baby. Then he waits for the bottom, but he can't time it. Nobody can. He finally gets back in around March 2010, when the market has already recovered 25% from the lows. He missed the entire snapback. Guy B, Lazy Larry. Larry doesn't even know there is a crisis. He is busy. He has got a business to run. He doesn't check his account, doesn't watch the news, just keeps his automatic monthly contributions running like a machine that nobody remembered to turn off. By 2015, Panic Paul has about $1,200,000. Okay, not terrible. He protected some capital, got back in, rode the tail end of the recovery. Lazy Larry has $1,600,000. $400,000 difference. Same starting point, same market, same economy, same damn decade. Paul's fire drill cost him a beach house. His emotional intelligence, his informed decision, making his prudent risk management, it literally cost him $400,000 and the retirement upgrade that comes with it. And here is the psychology that LL haunt you. In 2008, Paul felt smart. His friends called him prudent. He was the responsible one. Larry looked like an idiot. His account was down 40% and he didn't even blink. Everyone thought Larry was either brave or brain dead. 7 years later, Larry's looking at second properties, and Paul is still working to close the gap. The fire drill trained Paul for the wrong outcome. It trained him to avoid the feeling of loss, not the reality of loss. And those two things, they're not even in the same universe. Here is a little historical therapy session. Pull up a 30-year chart, 1994 to 2024. During that period, you lived through the dot-com explosion, the 11th of September, the 2008 financial crisis, the European debt crisis, Colorado vid, multiple wars, political chaos. That would make a screenwriter say, that is too unrealistic. If someone told you in 1994 that all of that was coming, you would never invest a single dollar. You'd bury gold in your backyard and stockpile canned soup, like a doomsday prepper, and you'd be dead wrong. Someone who put $1 million into the market in 1994 and just held, ignoring every headline, every crash, every pundit, every prediction, every reason to panic, they have roughly $6 million today. There are always reasons to sell. The market doesn't give a damn about your reasons. It just keeps compounding. Slowly, stubbornly, relentlessly, like water wearing through rock. All right, three specific things smart retirees do differently. And I'm going to be blunt because sugarcoating this is what got people into trouble in the first place. Thunty, stop checking your account during volatility. I'm dead serious. There is a concept in behavioral economics called myopic loss aversion. The more frequently you evaluate your losses, the more painful they feel, and the more likely you are to do something catastrophically stupid to make the pain stop. Bernardsey and Thaler did the research. Investors who checked their accounts annually generated higher returns than investors who checked monthly. Not because the market treated them differently, because they treated themselves differently. So during the next crash, and there will be a next crash, that is not a prediction, that is just how markets work, delete the app. Forget the password, be like the manufacturing guy. Train yourself to measure wealth in decades, not in days. Your portfolio doesn't need your supervision, it needs your absence. Fin 2, build a portfolio so boring it could put a caffeinated teenager to sleep. IV got multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars invested, and my portfolio would make a 25-year-old Reddit day, trader weep, with boredom. Index funds, dividend aristocrats, companies that sell band-aids and toothpaste and electricity. Stuff that generates cash, whether the market is partying or panicking. I don't need Nvidia to triple for my retirement to work. I need Procter & Gamble to keep selling laundry detergent. When your portfolio depends on the hype continuing, you've built a house of cards and you're surprised when the wind blows. When you own boring cash-flowing businesses, you can hold through anything because the engine underneath doesn't stop running just because Twitter is having a meltdown. Buffett figured this out in the late 90s. While everyone was throwing money at dot-com companies that had zero revenue and billion-dollar valuations, he bought insurance companies, railroads, utilities, things that made actual money. People called him washed up, out of touch, a dinosaur. Then 2000 hit, the Nasdaq fell 78%, every hot tech stock vaporized. And Buffett's boring portfolio just kept chugging along, paying dividends, generating cash like a diesel truck that doesn't care about the hurricane. By 2005, he outperformed every tech fund on the planet. Not because he predicted the crash, because he built something that didn't need the party to keep going. 3. Pre-commit to doing nothing, in writing right now. This is the one nobody wants to hear, and it is the most important. Literally write this down, tape it to your monitor, tattoo it on your forearm if you have to. When the market drops 20%, I will do nothing. When it drops 30%, I will invest more. When every headline says, this time is different, I will reread this note and do nothing. Odysseus had himself tied to the mast so he couldn't steer toward the sirens. You need the investing equivalent. A pre-commitment device that physically prevents you from panic selling when your brain is flooded with cortisol, your hands are shaking, and your brother-in-law is texting you that he moved everything to cash. The crash doesn't kill portfolios. Your untrained, unrehearsed, emotionally hijacked reaction to the crash. That is the killer. That has always been the killer. So here is what actually happens in 2026 or 2027 or whenever the next scare comes. Maybe the market crashes, maybe it doesn't. Concentration is high, sure, but it has been high before, and the result was a coin flip, not a death sentence. What isn't a coin flip is human behavior. When fear arrives, and it always arrives, most people will execute the fire drill they've been trained for. They'll sell to stop the pain, they'll wait for certainty before buying back in, and they'll lock in losses that take years, sometimes decades, to recover from. The people who understand this, the ones with boring portfolios, pre-written plans, and the discipline to stare at a 30% drawdown and yawn, they'll be fine. Not because they're geniuses, not because they have inside information, because they practiced for the right emergency. The market is boringly predictable over decades. Your behavior during a crash is the only variable that is truly random. Fix the behavior, the market handles the rest. And if you still feel like you have to do something during the next downturn, go run the numbers on that early retirement calculator I built. Links in the description. At least you'll be stressing over math instead of emotions. And math, unlike your gut, doesn't lie. Stop rehearsing the wrong fire drill. The house isn't burning, you are.